Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Western Spirit. Today, we have someone who I've followed a long time now on X, Twitter, and other places. Today, with us is Oli London. Ali, first of all, is the author of the great book called Gender Madness. And he's someone who has a very interesting life experience and also someone who speaks to our younger generation in the West in a way that for example, I don't think I can do. So it's a pleasure talking to you, Ali. And again, thank you for all the great work you do.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Ariel.
So, Ali, can we start before we get into what's happening now with a little bit about your journey from peak woke? Wrote about your book title is Gender Madness. So, peak gender madness to where you are today, and maybe through that, try to understand the challenges of people like us talking with people in the West, the younger generation, and where they are.
Yeah, so I used to be very woke, actually. About
Yeah,
5, 6 years ago, I was younger. I was, you fall susceptible to these things online, spending a lot of time on X, on TikTok. And, I used to have
yeah,
completely different views about the world. I was very liberal minded. In terms of gender ideology, I kind of felt susceptible to that. And as Elon Musk calls it, the woke mind virus. When you're young, I think you're very susceptible to these ideas. And I've changed a lot since then. In the last 3 years, I actually became Christian 3.5 years ago, and that gave me a different perspective in life, and that kind of woke me up to all the craziness going on in the world. Because now it's like. People see evil things and think they're good,
yes.
as is the case with people supporting Hamas, these university students. So it kind of made me have a different perspective on the world, that the world seems upside down, that, something that is so evil and abhorrent is being celebrated and supported in certain places. And, that is what I think is the woke mind virus. And that is something that, I previously had different political beliefs, and I've educated myself and changed since then.
And Ali, one of the things that I think we can say maybe the woke mind virus is the identity politics. So instead of looking at every case in its entirety, objectively trying to understand the facts of the situation, everything is boiled down to group identity. So if you're a white male, usually straight, you're looked down upon. If you're religious, you said if you just became Christian, so you're looked down upon. If you're someone who I guess is well off, you're a bad person usually. So can you just talk about like how that plays in to just people being a very bad way of looking at life because you're always going to be like trying to be a victim and trying to prove your victim status, and also how that plays into places like Israel, how people look at Israel.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Well, we do see with Generation Z, they are completely susceptible to these viewpoints. We see a lot of these young people that are identifying in different ways, whether it's non-binary, whether it's as a furry or, transgender. Of course, there are genuinely people that generally do feel like this way, but there's a lot of people that are falling victim to this ideology, and they want to be an oppressed victim, and it's a victim mentality. So we see a lot of cases. I've studied this, I've done research. A lot of the young people now identifying with Palestine or maybe coming out as trans, they are actually predominantly from either white middle class or white upper class families. So they are wanting to become an oppressed victim because it's become cool, it's trendy. We saw with the Black Lives Matter movement, we saw a lot of people. Of course, there are legitimate meanings behind some of these movements and stuff, but we saw a lot of people just jumping on the bandwagon, because it's trending, it's cool, putting the black square on Instagram when, all these influencers don't ever speak up for any kind of social issues. They're not doing anything for any particular community, they're just following a trend. So, we see that with a lot of young people jumping on the bandwagon. And we also see now that, like you said, white heterosexual men or Christians or, other groups, people that have wealth, are being perceived as evil by this Generation Z. They are these are bad people, these are, if you're white, you're automatically, a right-wing extremist because you're a white straight man. And, it's that attack on identity. And we also have with gender ideology an attack on the family unit. So we see a lot of young people being pushed away from their families, and not just with gender, but with all of these different movements, the pro-Palestine movement, all of these different things are trying to isolate and radicalize these young people's minds. And, unfortunately, in universities and college campuses, young people are very susceptible. And, many young people are liberal. And there is a saying, as you get older, people become conservative, because they kind of wake up to the world. And when you're in your teens or early 20s, you have these liberal ideologies. But, there is an attack on, like you said, Christians, Jewish people, because they're perceived as bad, because they are powerful. And we also see that oppressor victim mentality, which you see a lot with transgender ideology, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and also with the Palestine movement. And we just want to mention a great example of that. I think Ireland, we've seen so much anti-Semitism in Ireland, and the Israeli embassy actually closed in Ireland due to, the situation there is just abhorrent. And for Jews living in Ireland, it's a small community, but they're having a very tough time. And my understanding of that is that, over the year, in the past, Irish had a lot of issues with Britain. They saw Britain as a colonizer, as a big, powerful oppressor. The Irish were the oppressed. So I think that mentality has been passed down to them through generations. And that's why I believe, Ireland seems to be the most anti-Semitic and pro-Palestine country in Europe because of that mentality. These people have grown up looking at another country that has a big military or a wealthy country as an oppressor, and the place where like Palestine, or as Ireland was with the British, as an oppressed community. So they try to identify with that because they think they're doing the right thing.
And Ali, from your personal experience, can you from becoming the you talking about your gender identity, where you were and how you understood coming to where you are now as a religious person, as a Christian, the I think one of the things that we miss a lot is the fact that when people are missing community, a sense of belonging. And we've become so atomized. And I'm very an individualistic person. I believe in individual rights, but just as a community, not from the government. People have become so atomized. No one's going to church or synagogue anymore. No one's meeting other people their age. Dating is all online now. So you're not meeting people or going out to a bar, to the pub in the UK, you call it, to meet people, and you're all alone, and so you're looking for meaning. And one of the things that gives you meaning is this like woke sort of, you're looking for your identity, you're meeting other people that have the same identity as yours, or that you can talk to them. Can you maybe talk about the fact that how much community is lacking, and how much it's giving, the lack of it is making people go to these very extreme places?
That's a great point. In the 1950s, 1960s in America, people would be going to church every Sunday. They would dress up in their best. They'd be hosting church events, tea parties and community events, helping others. And that is missing now in America and largely across the West. We don't see the young generation having that sense of belonging or sense of community. We don't see, let's say, kids going to church, going to a synagogue, taking part in let's say scouts, that kind of thing, going outdoors, doing things together, making friends, learning key skills like communication skills. We don't see that anymore with young people. So a lot of young people, and we had this, I think it was accelerated with COVID because you had kids at home for 2 years, no contact with their classmates, they're on their phones, they're on TikTok all day. And, so kids, in this young generation have kind of had a few years without contact with the outside world. So they've become very isolated, they've become very anxious, they have a lack of self-esteem. So then turn to these groups, whether it's the pro-Palestine movement, the BLM movement, whether it's the gender ideology movement. They turn to these groups for a sense of community, and a lot of it's an online community. They will see something maybe trending on TikTok and they will jump on the bandwagon, like the Palestine thing. If you ask these kids a basic question about the history of Israel, they wouldn't be able to answer you. What river are you chanting about? They have absolutely no idea. So, they're jumping on a trend because they want to have a sense of community. And I think the best example of that was, as I said earlier, with Black Lives Matter, when you had millions of influencers posting a black square. They've never said anything, or you don't see these influencers going out and doing charity work, helping the black community or other communities. It's literally jumping on a bandwagon because it's a sense of community. And if you don't do that, you are vilified. So we saw that influencers that didn't post a black square were vilified. How dare you? This is outrageous. You're racist. So they are then pressured to post that black square. And in terms of the Israel-Gaza war, we saw the All Eyes on Rafah post, which was again just like the Black Lives Matter square. Had about 50 million people sharing that, celebrities, influencers, and jumping on the bandwagon. Not no research about actually the hostages are being held in Rafah. This is where dozens and dozens of people that were kidnapped from their homes are being held. Nothing about that. Literally just posting this AI image, All Eyes on Rafah, and it's trying to belong to a sense of community and also jumping on a trend. And there's a lot of peer pressure with young people because if they don't conform to the latest trend, they are ostracized or they'll get a hate comment. And young people can't deal with negativity. They're not used to being in the real world, to be honest. They've grown up in an online world, on TikTok, on social media. So whenever they get somebody maybe criticize them or say, how dare you say this, they are then peer pressured to jump on that trend and conform.
Yes. And so, Ali, you have been in Israel for I think over since October 7th, especially a significant amount of time. You've been here where I am. I don't know where you are right now, but you've been lately even here. You've met all the top people in the government here. You've gone to the south where the October 7th happened. I assume you've also been to the north where, before people started going back, where the Hezbollah was basically made the entire north Jew free for a few months there, almost a year. Can you give us a little bit about, from the outsider's view, what you saw here, how you were able, how is it different than what is being told to people outside of Israel of what is happening here? Give us a little bit of a flavor.
Well, I am of the belief that if you want to understand something, you actually have to be there on the ground. You actually have to meet different community leaders, different people, and, educate yourself. So, that's what a lot of young people don't do, is they don't actually educate themselves. So, coming to Israel, it was a very important experience. I actually came 6 weeks after the October 7th attack and visited Kfar Aza, visited the southern communities, Sderot, met with grieving families and really tried to hear their stories and try to amplify that with the world because, I think you need to be there on the ground to really understand what happened and the gravity of that because Israel is a country, a population, I believe, over 10 million people. I know it's growing. It's a lot of Israelis having big families, which is amazing. But you need to be there on the ground to realize that every single Israeli was affected that day on October 7th. Everybody knows somebody that was either a victim, somebody that was kidnapped, they know a family member. So everybody is feeling that pain. So you need to be there on the ground to get a sense of the gravity of the situation. I was there when American hostage Keith Siegel was actually flown on a helicopter to the hospital. I was in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, and you need to be there to understand how painful this is for the Israeli community, but also how people have rallied together. We were just talking about community, how that's lacking in the Western world, but Israel has such an incredible sense of community. The fact that there were hospital staff, working double, triple shifts on October 7th. I visited multiple hospitals and they just came in a sense of duty. As the attack was unfolding, you had the Zakat, you had, United Hatzalah, people going down to the south, risking their lives to help people. That's the Israeli That's just the Israeli spirit, you know. They care about other people. They want to help people, and so it was really important for me to see that and to hear all these different stories from people. And yes, I have visited the north to understand also the gravity of the Hezbollah situation, which there was a town on the border, 60,000 people evacuated, and not everybody knows this outside Israel, but Hezbollah was planning an attack from the north, which you know would have probably been more severe because they had a larger number of terrorists compared to Hamas. So, you know, they were planning to do a coordinated attack, and then Hamas went ahead. So, yeah, to be there to understand that, and then also visited the Golan Heights, Majal Shams, and actually met with the families that lost their kids, you know, from the Hezbollah rocket attack. And you know, I implore anyone to go to Israel to actually listen to people's stories, because you see things on the news, you see things on social media, but you need to be there. You need to witness this. You need to see the situation, the fact that there were hundreds of thousands of people that had to flee their homes in the wake of October 7th from the north, and you know couldn't return home. Some of them still haven't returned home, and you know there's a big impact. The other impacts, you know, there wasn't enough people to pick the crops on the farms, so there was a worry of a food shortage. So that's the kind of thing that you learn on the ground. And you know, I've been back 3 times since October 7th, and no, the Israeli resilience is incredible. The spirit of community, how they all come together and rally together to help people, is incredible.
Ali, what is, if you can give us your, I guess, most the situation that was most touching for you, that was most, mind blowing when you were here?
The issues. Okay.
Ali, if you can look back at your 3 trips here and your time spent, can you give us maybe 1 or 2 stories or just things that happened, what you were a witness to, that really those stuck out with you that you can tell us?
Well, when I visited the South, that was very, very harrowing to actually meet people that survived that day, meet people that lost their families, their loved ones, entire communities. And, you know, I also met a former hostage. I met, you know, a variety of people, Rachel Goldberg Polin. And, you know, these people have been through something that's so unimaginable. You can't even grasp the pain and suffering they've been through. But as an example, you know, Rachel Goldberg Polin, the strength and courage of her, and it's just a beacon of light after all this darkness that's happened and all the suffering. You know, the fact that Israeli people pick up the pieces and have to continue with life, and you know, Am Israel High, you know, they celebrate and a life, you know, because unfortunately throughout history Jewish people have been persecuted for 3,000 years, and you know they just have to keep on going, they have to keep on living. And to see that resilience and you know the dignity. I've met women that survived very horrific things on October 7th, and you know, it's unbearable to think what they've been through, but they still hold their head high. They're still trying to help be a beacon of light in this world. They're still trying to be positive. They're still trying to help other people, maybe help other survivors that are suffering with trauma. And that for me is very powerful. So, yeah, visiting southern communities, I went to Kibbutz Nir Oz and actually meeting people that survived and hearing their first-hand accounts. And you know, I've been all over the country in Israel, the north, the south, you know, the east. Uh, just hearing people's stories, I think, is so important. Also, just to let them know that someone cares as well, because unfortunately, Israeli people have felt very isolated the last, you know, year and a half, and feel abandoned. You know, every time I go to Israel, they say, "Oh gosh." London doesn't seem good right now. You know, Europe, what's going on in Europe is crazy. And you know, Israeli people need to be reassured that there's actually somebody out there that wants to listen. So I think it's so important for many people to come from all walks of life to come to Israel
There's
and
no
to
flights. Ali,
learn
the
and
problem is there's no they canceled all the flights now. It's like I can't get out of here. It's like, we're stuck. But only El Al and the other Israeli airline does it, and they take tons of money. So we're all stuck here because now the Houthis shot a missile that fell in the airport, and that's it. Yeah, but if you guys can come, come. You're invited here for Shabbat. I wanted to also ask you about I just, as you were speaking about everybody being against us, we have this is the second Eurovision now that is going to be since October 7th, where Israel is going to take part. And the first one was with, I think, if I remember correctly, Noah. I'm not a big into Eurovision, and she was Eden Golan, sorry, Eden Golan, and she was amazing. Her song was amazing. By the way, they made her, the judges before the committee made her take out words of the song, of the original song, because it commemorated her friends that died in the Nova Film Festival at the massacre. They said it was political, which is like unbelievable. Like, just to remember friends that died is political, but okay. And when you said that to remind Israelis that people support them, was the silent majority that gave her all the points, right? So the judges gave her like 0 points, and then she got tons from all over the world. Even places like Ireland gave her points, and it was a very weird contrast where people, when when no one sees, they're willing to give you the points because, like you said, it's socially unacceptable in a lot of places to support Israel. But if no one sees, we'll support you, right?
Yeah, I think that was probably the best example when, Israel ranked in the top because of the public votes in many, many countries, from the UK, Ireland. And that was very significant because it shows there is a silent majority that supports Israel. Eurovision, people say it's political. The UK never seems to win because we left the European Union. We're always like in the bottom. Bottom 10. So, they say the Eurovision, the voting's political, and that was a very big symbolic moment. The fact that people from many countries had rallied to support Israel to make a statement that, we stand with Israel, we stand with the good in the world. And, this year is Yuval Raphael, who is the survivor of the Nova Festival. And, she has such an incredible song and a very powerful story to tell. But sadly, she is subjected to a lot of hate. And, this is a girl that survived a massacre. She had to hide under dead bodies of her friends. And the fact that there's 70 former Eurovision singers trying to get the band, there's countries trying to get the band, the RTE, the Irish broadcasters questioning whether Israel should participate. It's just ridiculous. This is a song competition that's been going for decades, that is non-political. It's meant to spread happiness. You have different songs from different countries, sometimes cheesy songs, very entertaining songs. It's meant to be fun. So the fact that these people and Palestine activists are trying to hijack this song contest, same with a sport is non-political, a song competition is non-political. Everybody has the right to compete. So, Yuval Raphael has a beautiful, beautiful song, and but sadly she is being subjected to a lot of threats. She has to have a lot of security, and it's plain and simple anti-Semitism. Simply because this girl is from Israel, she is being targeted. And again, this is a girl that survived a massacre. This is somebody that people should rally behind. But I do think we're going to see, like last year, the public vote again coming behind Israel. But of course, with the judges, we know they're biased. Look what happened last year. I mean, Eden Golan had the beautiful, beautiful voice, incredible performance. But, I think we will again see the silent majority sending a clear message that they do actually stand with Israel.
And one thing that the Eurovision is a very big, I say, like, gay event for a lot. It's like a very, I would say, pride event. And the thing that like, when I was now in New York not too long ago, I went to one of the campuses to meet Jewish students as part of a delegation, and I saw a protest and there's, on the one hand, Islamist flags of like all these Islamist organizations, and right next to them are rainbow flags, Queers for Palestine. In the beginning, I thought it was a joke, Queers for Palestine, because I really did. I thought it was like a parody, and then I realized it was a real thing. And can you, maybe, this is going back to the book, the title of the book, what is wrong with people? Like, how do you come to an idea where on the one hand you're gay, you're trans, you're bisexual, whatever, so your gender identity is not hetero, and on the other hand you're supporting an organization that literally will kill you the second you come out? How does that compute for people?
Well, it just shows you that this is a cult mentality. It's nothing to do with Palestine. It's nothing to do with Palestine at all. It's just these people jumping on a trend, jumping on a bandwagon, and again, it's a cult mentality. Same with gender ideology. These people are, they go crazy if you don't call them they, them, you misgender them. It's just, and, people can be respectful for different people, of course, but the fact that they overreact, and it's that victim mentality. So, it is a cult, and sadly it's seeped in the minds of a lot of young people going to colleges and universities. And when the Columbia students stormed the Butler Library recently, the Washington Free Beacon newspaper actually checked all of the arrest records. There was about 80 people arrested. 11% of those arrested were non-binary, using they/them pronouns. So we know there's a big percentage of LGBTQI plus people supporting Palestine, and it's just so ridiculous because Israel has helped over the years so many Palestinians flee and get asylum in Israel, and people don't know that. The fact that there are Palestinians have been beheaded, have been killed in the past for being suspected of being gay or lesbian. That is, it's insanity to identify with that and think, oh, these are the good people. Because if these activists went to Gaza, if they held their Queers for Palestine LGBT flag, it would not end well. So it's just, again, a cult mentality. These people don't actually think logically. There's no reasoning to it. You can't have a sensible debate. You can't speak to these people because they're not going to hear it. So it ties in with the gender ideology, the BLM movement. All of this is kind of this radicalized youth, which I believe is rooted in a form of Marxism. It's rejecting the truth, rejecting the basic truth, and also not being able to have debate, and then vilifying somebody that might have a different opinion, canceling people, like professors, canceling them if they may have a different opinion. That is a Marxist
Yeah.
movement.
And I will ask you at the end of your personal experiences, giving speeches, talking to people, how you experience this type of thing. But before that, your country of birth is the UK, and I want to talk about the whole of Europe, but the UK is a perfect example. Since October 7th, every Saturday, pretty much, I think, for sure in London, and I assume in other big cities of the UK, we've seen these huge marches. There was a few times where you saw the helicopter aerial view, where it's like never ending sea of people just marching in support, I'm sorry to say, in support of Hamas. It's not even against Israel. They're marching with signs that like are praising the Hamas fighters, the Al-Qassam brigades, the Nukhbot, all these, and some of them even now have the Houthi flag, which is, people need to know, the Houthi flag says on it, death to the Jews, death to the Americans, and all this kind of things. So people are going with those flags, with Hezbollah flags, pictures of Sinwar and Nasrallah. And this is happening in Western cities all over the world, and including your country where you were brought up in, where you call home. What is happening in the UK? I'm just taking it as an example because that's where you know better than other places. But what is happening?
Well, yeah, every single Saturday since October 7th, there have been these protests. And they're not peaceful protests. They're not, oh, we just want peace. They're never calling for peace, never calling for the hostages. They are literally calling for the eradication of the state of Israel. There's nothing peaceful about these protests. And interestingly, Ariel, on October 7th, there was actually a large protest outside the Israeli embassy, London, while the attack was going on in Israel. These people already had the flags, they already had the placards. So, somebody is paying for this. Somebody had inside information to know that. And the fact that these every single Saturday, and I speak to Jewish people, Jewish community leaders in London. They don't like going out to central London on the weekend. They will actually avoid central London for their safety. They are not wearing their Star of Davids. They're not wearing their kippas. And that is appalling. London is meant to be a multicultural, diverse city, that is very well known around the world for being all inclusive, embracing, welcoming. And the fact that Jewish people cannot go into the center of their own city is very, very alarming. And the fact that there's this double standards with police, they don't do anything, they're not doing anything to protect Jewish people. And then you have the media stirring up hatred when you have, the BBC, Sky News with their constant fabricated reporting about what's going on in Gaza. they are riling people up to make people angry and radicalized. They're not reporting the truth that's actually happening on the ground, and it is radicalizing people. And sadly, institutions like universities have been captured. They are pushing this, and again, people don't think logically. And like you said, they're waving all sorts of horrible flags, Houthi flags. And ask them a question about that, they will have absolutely no clue. They'll just be waving it and screaming, but they have no clue what they're even saying. And it is a cult. It's a cult mentality. They're like sheep. They're like as if they're possessed. It's free, free Palestine, and then they're chanting for Intifada. And if you go up to one of these young people with a microphone, say, what river are you chanting about? They have absolutely no idea. River Jordan. They're clueless. So it's been happening every single weekend. Of course, you have other countries in Europe that has. Obviously, last year in Amsterdam, the horrific the Israeli football fans were attacked like a pogrom. It was absolutely shocking. So we see that in Berlin there are protests, and it's shocking to see that. But I don't think these people speak for the majority. We saw that with the Eurovision votes. Most people actually voted for Israel. The silent majority are actually fed up with all these people every single weekend. They deface statues. They're banging drums. They're screaming. They're shouting at people. People have had enough of that. It's every single weekend. So same in New York. You have some very violent protests, and the NYPD have a very tough time because they can arrest them, but a lot of the district attorneys just release them. Don't charge. So that is a problem. So I think in terms of policing, they need to. The police may arrest them, but they need to be charged by the district attorneys, and that's not the case right now. So it is sad for Jewish people, and that nobody should feel, whatever religion, whatever community, nobody should feel unsafe in their own city. And there is a large Jewish community in London, and many of them don't actually go into central
So
London because of this.
yeah, so I wanted to ask you one thing that I interviewed a few days ago, and we'll publish it soon. With Had an episode, the former Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott, and one of the things I asked him about the anti-Semitism in Australia, and he said that in the past decade, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact words, there has been a large problem with immigration where people from cultures that aren't Western, that have very backward views, that are, let's put it bluntly, anti-Semitic, come to Western countries, including, he's speaking specifically about Australia, and they are becoming, they're first of all anti-Semitic themselves, but then they become voting blocs, and the current coalition is placating to them. They need their votes. And so they're not taking care of the protests with tough gloves. They're not arresting them. They're not, speaking out against them because they're scared that the Muslim bloc, he said this, so I'm allowed to say it if he said it, the Muslim bloc will vote for other, either independent candidates and all this other thing. And he said that for him he thinks the number one reason why they have not been treating these, they had firebombs on synagogues in Australia and all this type of thing, and said that's the number one reason. And then when I look at the UK, I see that in the last election, I think there was like 10 MPs that were independently elected just on the Gaza issue in different seats in the UK Parliament. The parts of the Labour government party are totally pro-Palestine 100% all the way. Where are you worried that we are, just demographically, and also because immigration is so uncontrollable, that Western countries, including the UK, are going to be less and less Western?
Well, yeah, it's a great point. You have also the UK, Canada that pander to this community to get votes, and a lot of these politicians, they don't have a spine. Sadly, they just want votes. That's all they care about, is getting re-elected, and they don't actually care about. Hang on a minute, am I supporting the right people, the wrong people? And you had in the UK, I believe it was 5 MPs, including Jeremy Corbyn, that actually became independent MPs on the issue of Gaza. And then you had pro-Hamas MP George Galloway, who was elected to Rochdale, and he was just at Putin's Moscow Victory Day parade. He was just in Iran, in Tehran, receiving the award named after Ismail Haniyeh. And this is a member of parliament. This should be outrageous for people, but these MPs have been elected simply for being pro-Gaza. They don't represent their respective countries, they're literally pandering to a certain community to get a vote. And that is wrong. And politicians need to actually grow a spine and speak up. And, you know, no community deserves to be targeted, whoever they are, for their identity or whatever. So, these politicians need to be standing up for the Jewish community and stop pandering for votes. And it really is a big problem because, like you said, these voting blocks, they'll then go independent, they'll then, go against Labour in the UK. And you have a lot of Labour MPs that are pandering to that community, and, they will not take action on certain things in case they upset or offend that community, which is ridiculous. Their first and foremost duty is to their country. They should be serving all people, all communities that elected to them, and not pandering to one
And Ali,
specific
could I
group.
just ask one more on that point? Is that we've been reading here a lot just from afar the whole scandal of the grooming gangs. And one of the things that I understand is that the reason why a lot of these things, at least the suspicion is that the reason why they haven't been taken care of is because people in the police or in the, I guess, the prosecutor's offices and all the authorities were scared of being called racist against Muslims, right? It was basically sort of a woke, people were scared of the woke mob. If they were, even if they themselves weren't, they were scared that of the woke mob or of the, and now I heard that and tell me if this is right, the reason why the current government isn't promoting an inquiry into what's happening is because they're scared of offending the Muslim voting bloc.
Yeah, well, the Keir Starmer actually got every single Labour MP not to vote for a national grooming gang inquiry, which is appalling. Every single one of these girls, there was thousands of girls, deserves justice. They deserve a voice. And it's like a slap in the face to all victims of assault and abuse. And, it is absolutely appalling. And, the fact that the Labour Party have had a lack of action on this, and, there was a local council that actually requested to the Women and Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips to do an investigation. She rejected it, and it's just so wrong. And the UK is so woke, it's ridiculous. They're pandering. They don't want to be considered racist. You saw with the Black Lives Matter movement, police officers taking the knee, but police should not be political. They should not be taking any stance. And you even had Keir Starmer taking a knee, and it's just it's pandering and to one specific community. And at the end of the day, regardless of who commits a crime, it should be investigated. And what happened in the UK is absolutely scandalous, and so many thousands of girls were victims to this. And the media tries to downplay it. Oh, if you dare question it, you're a far right racist. And that's they try to demonize people that uh, speak up for victims, or demonize the victims themselves, which is incredibly
But Ali,
wrong.
one thing that it's so weird because, and this just might tell if you agree with me, that if the you're basically inferring, not you, when you say that if I will make an inquiry, for example, the Muslim voting bloc will be angry at me. You're inferring that the entire Muslim population supports what these Pakistani gangs did. And that is the most racist thing you can think, that all Muslims or a majority of Muslims support, all this grooming gang, what was done to these poor young girls. It's I don't think that, and I assume you don't think that, but they do think that, and that's why they're scared to do anything. They're the real racists.
Yeah, they absolutely are the real racists, and they're also the real racists with what's going on with Jews now. Ignoring the Jew hatred and not standing up for that. And it's just wokeness has gone so ridiculously far that these people can't even see the absolute hypocrisy of what they're doing. And like you said, it's actually racist in itself. They're pretending, they're trying not to be racist. They don't want to offend anyone, but they're actually being racist. That's
It's
very true.
I forgot, in America, I think it was Thomas Sowell that said the soft bigotry of low expectations, where you're just looking at someone, seeing his color, his religion, ethnicity, and saying, oh, because he's that, his opinions must be, either, something that's not Western, or that's pro hurting women. And that's the essence of bigotry. And so, yeah, I wanted to finally get to your personal experiences. So you started off in a very woke environment. You're famous. I read about you a little bit. It's an amazing story. I urge everyone to read about Ali and read his book and read where he's coming from, personally, and just the way you intellectually developed and spiritually also. Um, and so you started off from where you started off, and I assume when you started off, you got a lot of hate from a certain group, and now where you are, you're getting hate from the other group, and so, so everyone hated you at some point, and everyone loved you at some point. How do you deal? First of all, has it gotten worse since you publicly came out for Israel, since you came to Israel and started posting stuff about here? And also, what? How do you deal with that? Have you gotten death threats, and are you safe? How do you deal with all this stuff?
Well, yeah, firstly, I'm very used to all the hate because
Everyone hates you.
obviously when I spoke out against gender, yeah, when I spoke out against gender ideology, the trans activists, just exactly the same mentality as Palestine activists. They're like a cult. They all come for you, and it's basically it's trying to silence someone. So we see, female athletes when they say they don't want biological males in women's sports, they get attacked, they get vilified. Look at J.K. Rowling, and it's trying to silence people. And I don't believe in that. I believe you have to be strong, courageous, speak up, and who cares what these bots, all these people online with no pictures say? Who actually cares? We need to stop worrying about what people think and actually be true to ourselves, stick up for good moral values, and that is my belief. So I already had all the crazy trans activists attacking me every day online. So obviously, in terms of moral clarity, it wasn't a question about standing with Israel from October 7th. What happened? It was literally good versus evil, light versus dark. So, I didn't think twice about speaking up and continued to speak up. And, I think it's the same people, the pro-Palestine people, the trans activists, they're all the same. It's the Marxist ideology, the cult. They scream at you, it's into an echo chamber. And, I just think who cares what these people say, because if somebody is willing to have a sensible debate, I'm happy to do it. But I'm not, not going to listen to all these silly hate comments or calling me a Zionist as if that's an insult. That's actually a compliment. Supporting the state of Israel. They don't even know what that word means. So for me, it's like dealing with hate. I don't read the comments. I don't acknowledge the hate comments. I don't acknowledge any of it and stuff. And that would be my advice to people, because the more people that speak up, then you can counter this online narrative, which it seems, if you go on social media, it seems overwhelmingly pro-Palestine, but there's a lot of
Right. And
bots. There's
Ali,
about
let me just stop you there.
on.
It's not just pro Palestine. At least on X, I spoke with Eric Weinstein not too long ago. And he commented to me that he is going to tell Elon Musk, and he wrote to Elon Musk saying that something is wrong where there's like a huge amount of just any Jew that's well known, if you just go on their comments on any random tweet, the amount of just the groypers and the neo-Nazis and the people who just, it's not, Israel has nothing to do with it at that point. They're just calling the Jews. They're wishing death threats on the Jews, calling Jews in stereotypical, like really anti-Semitic stuff. It's not even, there's no nuance about it. You can't even, there's no plausible deniability. You're just anti-Jewish at that point.
Yeah, and these people are sadly actually proud of it.
Yeah.
And racism and anti-Semitism has always been there, but now these people can do it in the open. And when you have people like Kanye West, with
Yeah.
33 million ex-followers, spewing this hatred and releasing this horrific new song, and what message does that send to his 33 million followers? That, oh, this is cool, this is trendy, it's
Exactly.
great to mock Jews, oh, Jews control the world. This narrative, this anti-Semitic narrative, and it's become popularized, and people now don't fear recourse. They don't fear repercussions of spewing that hatred online. They don't think about the consequences. We saw it in Columbia University. So this stuff that happens online translates into the real world when Jews are being
Yes.
attacked on the streets of New York because of what they're seeing on Twitter. They're being radicalized by Twitter, TikTok. It's become cool. They're like modern day brown shirts, going around like thugs targeting Jewish businesses. Just like
Yes.
Kristallnacht. It's so many parallels with what happened in 1930s Germany, and that is the danger, and that's why it's so important for people to speak up now and combat that before it gets
And I
worse.
encourage exactly what you said. Professor Neil Ferguson was on our show about a year ago, and he said that he is standing with Israel not only because he thinks Israel's right, but because he believes that if he doesn't stand with Israel, and then there is a second Holocaust or a second something very very bad for the Jews in a much larger scale, he won't be able to live with himself. And he thinks, as a historian, that it's not far fetched because we're all, oh, who knows something like that's going to happen? It's not far fetched. And the more I see what's happening on social media, in the sense that people are not afraid to just, with their own pictures, with their own stuff, just say it out loud and not even like no repercussions. Everybody's fine with it. Just it's the normal day on Twitter, X. Yeah, so I think that he has a point. And so I so appreciate people like you standing with us and for the truth. It's not just with us, it's for Western civilization the way it should be.
Hmm.
And so I appreciate what you're doing, Ali London. It's so great to talk to you. And I encourage my viewers and listeners and whoever happens to come across this video to purchase the book, to follow Ali on all his platforms, and to support you at every step of your way, because what you're doing is in Hebrew we say kadosh. It's a holy thing that you're doing. And I'm so happy for you that you found religion and God, and it's such a great thing. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Ariel. A pleasure, and thank you to everyone listening and watching as well. Appreciate it.